I remember when I was 9 years old, guys double, triple my age beat me with bats real bad. And I remember going to the hospital and the doctor telling me if if I got hit, I believe it was my left eye, one more time within 6 months that I would lose my eyesight in that eye. And once I got out of the hospital, I remember thinking to myself, this is never gonna happen to me again. And I decided in my mind, in my heart at that time, that I was gonna become one of the most feared gang members El Paso has ever seen, El Paso, Texas has ever seen, right? I said, all I know is gang banging, is selling dope, is womanizing, is being locked up. I was telling Gina, I don't even have a GED, you know what I'm saying? I was like, will this guy really want to use me? You know what I'm saying, for his glory, like you say? And she told me, yes, Wedo, he came and he died for people like you. And so when she said this, I told her, look, Gina, I don't know if this God is real, but if he can use this messed up, broken piece of trash, in other words, I was saying, and here I am. And I put my arms out. And I remember that day, man, I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. What's up, fam? This is Pastor Isaiah Blancas, the Gangster Preacher. What we do is church in the alleys throughout the nation and some parts in different countries. And we have services every week at church in the alleys for the broken, for the prostitutes, the gang members, the ex-mafia members or mafia members, organized crime members, homeless people, widows, broken people, stuff of that sort. So that's kind of a nutshell of what we do, our ministry, Gangsters for Jesus. Sin took me further than I wanted it to take me. Sin for me was everything from stabbing people to robbing people to putting fear into people. So I found Jesus, and it made me the man who I am today. Like I said, they call me the Gangster Preacher, and travel everywhere all the time throughout the year, every year. And yeah, man, that's where sin took me, and this is where God brought me. When I was 8 years old, I remember having a good life. I remember having a mom, a dad. I remember being able to go into Walmarts or Kmart's at the time, and get a toy or a candy, and ask my dad for it, and he would buy it for me. I remember having a house, a dog. I remember me and my little sister, I have a little sister, we were very happy. So I had a good life, you know what I'm saying? And everything changed when I turned 9 years old. My life went from really good, or I'd even say great at the time, to being very broken and me being shell-shocked. So when I was 9 years old, my dad ended up leaving with my aunt and having kids. And my mom started telling me I looked like my dad and started kicking me on the streets when I was 9 years old. And so I went from this good life, right, to being in an area called the Jackie Robinson Project area in El Paso, Texas, where I'm from. So in that area, it was so bad that you would see prostitution. Normally you'd see a bunch of gangsters, mafia members, heroin needles all over the floor, spray paint all over the floor, people getting stabbed up, beat up, killed, all that. And so my life shifted drastically. And so when I was 9 years old, my mom had started to kick me out on the streets. Like I said before, it was like shell shock to me. I went from having this great life to being thrown into this environment where you couldn't even walk down our block. My gang was a notorious gang in El Paso, Texas, where 80% of my gang became organized crime members now. The people who are like the big dogs who run El Paso and Juarez, Mexico, and a lot of other places throughout the nation and world, pick 10% of the most violent members of gangs, of each gang. And my gang, the Jackie's gang, the Westside Locals PBJ gang, 80% of us became organized crime members. And so that's how crazy that environment was. You could not walk through our projects. Let's say there was an entrance going in one way and coming out the other. There's a guy in our ministry now in Gangsters for Jesus that said he grew up there, you know, in the 80s. And that's actually when I was there in the 80s too. That he remembers my older homeboys throwing dummies in front of cars, and they would think they were people, and they would stop, and they would rob them and beat them at gunpoint, and leave them almost butt naked and take every single thing from them. So that's the kind of area that I was kind of thrown into. And from that point on, my life got a lot worse real quick. And so I went from having this good life to having this crazy life, man. I remember when I was 9 years old, guys double, triple my age beat me with bats real bad. And I remember going to the hospital and the doctor telling me if I got hit, I believe it was my left eye, one more time, within 6 months, that I would lose my eyesight in that eye. And once I got out of the hospital, I remember thinking to myself, you know, this is never going to happen to me again. And I decided in my mind, in my heart at that time, that I was going to become one of the most feared gang members El Paso has ever seen, El Paso, Texas has ever seen, right? Where I'm from, it's called, the nickname's Chuco. So they call it Chuco because Pachucos come from there. So original Mexican gangsters come from there. So it's kind of like a trend where I come from. To dress like gang members and be in gangs and be affiliated and stuff like that. But the point I was at, and a lot of my homeboys, was a lot worse than that. I can say this, my homeboys, you know, even at that young age, I had two of them that they're dead now, which a lot of my homeboys are. But I remember their mom was a prostitute, and she used to sleep with our own homeboys for a fix, you know. And I think about it now, you know, all this stuff that my homeboys and me went through, and you know, I could just imagine what that did to their mindset, you know. Again, to them, this was normal. They were born in this. I have homeboys that were born in the projects, you know, so this was a normal thing for them, but not for me. I knew what a good life was. I knew what having a mom and a dad was. I knew what having a dog felt like. I knew what it felt to be loved, in other words, and they didn't. I had other homeboys that they met their dads doing life imprisonment terms. I had other homeboys that were so poor that they couldn't afford towels. They would dry themselves off with T-shirts. And a lot of the other homeboys, dads were all locked up in prison, either doing long periods or life imprisonment terms. The moms were in gangs. They were in our gang. A lot of them were big-time drug dealers. So that's the environment I was thrown into. 9 years old is when my life of crime started. It's when I started smoking weed, doing beer runs, stealing cigarettes, you know, sniffing paint. You know, we would spray paint socks and fold them and spray them and fold them and spray them, and then we would huff them and get high. And so I got big into that. Or like, let's say you had a Coke can, you'd spray the spray paint inside the Coke can and throw a rock in there, and when the paint would start getting dry, you would shake it and it would loosen the paint up so you could keep getting high off of it. So I started doing stuff like that. It ended up, or I ended up getting busted when I was 9, and that's the first time I started getting locked up. I was 9 years old when I first went to the El Paso detention juvenile center on Delta Street in El Paso, Texas. And from there, my life of crime started. When I was 9, I remember even at that time, my heart just getting colder and colder, and me not caring anymore. And I remember just it becoming kind of normal to me for me to be going in and out of the system since I was a little kid. I remember when I was like, probably say 11, I'd been to maybe like 8 to like 13 schools or something like that. And I was in a school that was for the worst of the worst kids. It was called BIC, Behavioral Intervention Class, I believe. And even there, I was always one of the worst ones. In that school, they had a little like seg cell, like if you were locked up. And what they would do is open a metal door, just like if you were locked up in the detention home or a facility, and put your food in there, and you weren't allowed to have books and pencils and stuff like that. And I would be in there almost all the time. And I remember thinking to myself, this is my life. Get used to it. You know what I'm saying? This is your life now. Now, contrary to what most people would say, right? They would say they would not change it, or they would want to live that lifestyle. Me, if you would have asked me at 11, 12, even 13, if my mom, my dad would have came back into my life and asked me, hey, come home, we're together again, I would have went immediately. But that was not an option, right? So my life started getting a lot worse. One thing that sticks out in my mind is I have a book out called From the Streets to the Throne by Isaiah Blancas that's available on Amazon, that's already sold over 10,000 copies. And I dedicate it to my grandmothers because to me, they're my heroes, right? My grandma went to go visit me at that school. And I remember my grandma telling me this later on, that she walked up to the secretary, and she asked her, I'm here to see someone. And the lady was real happy. She said, smiling and stuff. And she said, who are you here to see? And she said, Isaiah Blancas. And my grandma said when she said that her face kind of frowned. And she had a frown on her face, not smile anymore. And she said that kid's going to prison. And my grandma said, I rebuke that in Jesus' name. And my grandma told me later on she felt like she was eating her words, right? And I remember when I was going in and out of the system, I was around 11, 12. And I was in the detention home for something else. I was always in and out my whole life until I found God. And I remember my gang would be scraped in the metal doors. So my gang was actually more known in the system than it was in the free world. And which I believe gave us a lot more respect in organized crime, leadership's views, I guess. And so I remember always seeing my gang scraped in the walls and stuff like that. And I felt like I had a reputation to upkeep, this persona to upkeep, and to be more ruthless than other kids that were in the detention home with me, with all the gangs that were in there and stuff. And I remember one day I was in my cell, and I was looking through the little window, and I remember the doors were open, like 4 or 5 little kids run into another little kid's room, and they start raping him, right? And I remember thinking in my head, like, man, that little kid's a punk, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's never gonna happen to me. And after that, I think for him, a mechanism was to allow them into his room, because he started inviting them in and telling them to have sex with him, right? Like pretty much taking, I guess, his childhood or manhood, you could say, away from him. And for me, my mechanism was hatred, was anger, was violence, was being a no-nonsense person. And my dream became to be one of the most feared gangsters in El Paso, and also to go to prison, and that became my dream. And so most kids at that age, they would want to be a doctor, lawyer, police officer, or nurse or something like that. But my dream was to become a gangster. That was my reality. That's what I was seeing. I see a lot of my homeboys with lowriders, women, money, stuff like that. People terrified of them, fear. You know what I'm saying? Like that was a something that we used to make other gangs really fear us, or other organizations fear us, that weren't from our cities, right? El Paso or Juarez. So at that age, I remember getting out, and my grandma got a hold of me. By that time already, I had tried committing suicide. I have slits on my wrist to this day that you could see. I didn't have no hope. I was hopeless. I felt worthless. I felt like I was less than nothing. And my grandma got a hold of me, man, and she would always tell me, she adopted me, and she'd tell me, "Hey, mijo," and which means like, "Hey, my son, or my loved one," or whatever, right? I guess in English, she'd say, "Hey, mijo, Jesus loves you," and she'd tell me about this Jesus all the time. And in my head, I would always think, yeah, all right, grandma, like, we weren't disrespectful back then to our elders, but I wasn't trying to hear it, and I didn't believe in Jesus, to be honest, and I didn't believe in the devil either. I thought that was like a fairy tale God, and my grandma would always be telling me about this Jesus guy, right? And my grandma herself was so poor, and it's crazy because she was a preacher, and my grandfather was a preacher. He was actually my step grandfather. My real grandfather I met in the streets later on, drinking a Thunderbird with him, and he died in the streets, street life. But I don't consider him my real grandpa. My grandfather, who I consider my grandfather, was my step grandpa. And I remember both of them were so poor, even though they were preachers. They would make burnt beans every day. My grandma would tell me every day, "Ay, Juan, quemé los frijoles. I burnt the beans again." And so, I got sick of eating burnt beans, and I started selling dope. I was eating at McDonald's, I was starting to sell dope, stuff like that. I thought, at that time I was balling, because I could eat McDonald's or go buy myself something or whatever, right? Because up to that point I was stealing everything, whether it was shoes, food, anything that I needed, I had to steal, because I didn't have my parents in my life no more, and that's just the kind of people I was around. That's all we would do, was steal. It was an environment where evil was there 24/7. Immediately you'd walk out your door, and the conversations were, who we gonna stab today, who we gonna beat today, we're gonna go burn this cop car up today because he did something we didn't like, or who we gonna rob today, what kind of dope we gonna do today. And so that was my environment. And so when I ended up with my grandma, I didn't believe in Jesus. And I thought in my head, if this Jesus character was real, right, then why didn't he save me? Where was he? Why didn't he come through for me? Why didn't he come help me when my dad left with my aunt and my mom kicked me on the streets and stuff like that? And the environment I was in. And I just didn't understand, what I'm saying? And I was broken. And so at that age, I started selling so much dope, like 13, 14 years old, that I was moving hundreds of pounds of weed. And I started getting into selling other drugs. Roche pills, which is Revotrin in Juarez, Mexico. In America, it's called the date rape drug, I guess, Rohypnol. Which we didn't use that for women out there. We get high on it ourselves, right? And I started selling those pills. And I remember my life just started spiraling out of control more and more. I remember my grandmother was very in tune with God's spirit. And I remember I had, I think, like 500 pounds probably under her trailer where she lived. And she told me, what are you doing, Isaiah? And I said, what do you mean, Grandma? And she told me, God gave me a vision, and there was a anaconda under our trailer, and it was squeezing the life out of our trailer. And I was tripping out, right? I was thinking, man, my grandma found my weed, because she would throw big packs of pills away that I would be selling and stuff like that. And I'll tell her, hey, where's my aspirin? I need my aspirin. And she'll tell me, aspirins don't say rushes on them, you know what I'm saying? And I remember growing weed plants. And my grandma, right when they're gonna bud, they're getting big and stuff like that, she would pluck them out. And I'll tell her, hey, where's my apricot plant at? And she would tell me, apricots grow on trees, right? And so I think, just as us being young, we're ignorant and stupid, right? And my grandma wasn't a fool, so she knew what I was doing. And I just remember little things like that, and where I moved the weed immediately and stuff like that. 14, I was taking so many Rocha pills. Some people, would die taking 1, 2, 3 of them. I was popping probably like 100 Rocha pills a day. That's besides me smoking weed, me doing other drugs. I started selling acid too. I was selling sheets of acid. I remember I died on acid as well. I put like 15 hits in my mouth, on my tongue, and 5 in each of my eyes. And I'd mix MD 2020s with orange juice and stuff like that, and do other drugs while I was on acid. And I'd go on stabbing sprees, right? The 700 Club called me that my nickname was the Stabber. They called me the Stabber, right? But my nickname was actually Güero, which in English is white boy, because my skin is light compared to a lot of my Mexican homies, right? Some of them are actually so dark they look black, some of them, right? But they're Mexican. And so I remember coming back from that, and they brought me back to life in the hospital. I got out. It was just normal for me to be going in and out nonstop of the system. At 15, I remember linking up with another homeboy, right? And the way that we dress in El Paso, Texas, a lot of them still dress to this day, is with Dickies, shiny shoes. They're called bombitas, or like Nike Cortez. White shirts all creased out, or Ben Davis, or striped shirts like old school gangster style with hats. They're called tanditos. They're like gangster hats. Lokes on and stuff like that. Or shirts with old English letters with your gang name on it or whatever. And so I remember I met a homeboy that dressed similar, and he was from a different gang, but we would sell dope together and do dope deals together. And he dressed exactly just like this. He was bald. And I remember he told me, hey, Wedo, can I tell you something? We were partying all night. And it was me, him, and his mom. Him and his mom used to sell dope together. And I said, yeah, go ahead, homie. And he was telling me, you know why me and my mom are so successful at dope dealing? And I said, why is that? He told me, because we sold our souls to Lucifer, to Satan. And he told me, I believe you're one of Satan's chosen, because you're so violent and you don't care, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, yeah, okay, bro, And he was like, would you like to sell your soul to the devil? And I told him, well, what are you going to give me? He told me, I'll give you £1. And I told him, you going to give me £1, homie, right now for me to sell my soul? And he said, yeah. And I told him, let's do it right now. You know what I'm saying? So I ended up selling my soul to the devil, or so I thought right at the time. And for £1. I remember this dude shaving my head and rubbing some stuff on my head and lighting candles up and me reading some satanic scriptures or whatever. And I remember after that, man, I got really violent. I started stabbing a lot of people. And I would stab people to a point where they were on the floor convulsioning, and I'd be jumping on them while they were squirting blood. And that just kind of became normal life for me, and actually at 15 that had that it became so much of my lifestyle. I would say that I reached that, I guess you could say, that pinnacle of being a very respected gangster in the streets. I remember even 40-year-olds sometimes would come up to me with their problems and ask me if I could, stab someone or hurt someone or do something, and they would pay me for it. And I was 15 years old. And so I remember stabbing so many people that I ended up getting stabbed myself. I remember I got stabbed in my stomach right here. My meat was hanging out. And I could see all the little like bubbles on my meat, and I was squirting blood, right? And I stuffed my meat in with my finger, and I told my uncle, hey, sew me up. And he sewed me up with a regular needle and thread, right? Sewing thread. And I remember putting a patch over it and just putting tape over it, and I kept partying. And that's the way I lived, I remember when I was 15, I got busted for I think 5 or 7 stabbings at the time. And I ended up doing a good chunk of time in a detention home, and came out on house arrest. I ended up cutting my house arrest bracelet off and jamming out to Northern Cali, Hayward, and doing the same type of stuff, gang banging, selling dope, doing drugs, doing all that stuff. And started gang fights over there so bad that people started getting killed, and I just went right back to El Paso and started doing what I was doing. One thing I'll point out, I remember I was with my wife, beautiful, and I was with one of my homegirls. Her nickname's Silent, and she changed her life too. One of the few. And we were talking, and my wife asked her, how was it, being with my husband back in the day? And she said, if you're with Weddle, you better be willing to die. She said, because he was no joke. She said, with Weddle, it was fun and it was an experience, but it would get very serious too. She said, I remember one night we were partying in our projects, and she says, and Weddle always had a fake smile on. Like you could tell he was not really happy. And I think within me, what it was is that I knew what a good life was. And then I started living this crazy life, right? And I think I had a lot more anger than my homeboys and hatred than my homeboys did, because that was not normal for me. And I knew what normal was. But I guess that's why I let my life get to the point it did and just get so crazy with it. A lot of people would say out of my age range, I was the craziest one from our gang. And I remember her telling my wife, one time we were with Weddle partying, and, he would start getting drunk and start taking his Rocha pills and all that. And I would always carry a big screwdriver on me like this long, or a big knife. Or I even remember stabbing guys, with the barbecue grill, the things you flip meat with. I'd even stab people with those things, just to get a kick out of the fear out of their face, when I would stab them. And I would always have them inside my dickies, big long knives or big screwdrivers or something like that. And I remember my homegirl telling my wife, one time Weddle was talking to us, and he was starting to get crazy. And he's like, and she said we would even get scared because his voice would change, and it wasn't Weddle no more. She said it's like if a demon was talking to him. And she said my face would shape shift, that you couldn't even see my face. Right? And I had never heard this till years later, but it kind of makes sense now, just how evil I was. And I remember I got back from Cali, still doing the same type of stuff, drug dealing, stabbing people, hurting people. And I was on the run. I ended up doing a string of robberies. And man, I remember I think at this one robbery, I put these people in chairs and duct taped them, and duct taped their mouths and stuff like that, and took all their guns, jewelry, gold, silver, whatever, diamonds they had, money. And I remember slapping this guy in his head and taking the duct tape off his mouth and asking him what you got to eat. And told me pizza in the refrigerator. And I got the pizza right, and I was laughing at him. And I remember taking the pizza box, and I left walking, and a cop stopped me. And I was already on the run anyways from stabbings, cutting my bracelet off, other robberies, stuff like that I was already on the run for. And I remember him saying, "Hey, where are you going?" And I said, "I'm just going over here somewhere." And I remember him telling me, "Where are you coming from?" And of course I lied, but what I didn't realize is a pizza box, they had delivered it. So their address was right on the pizza box. So I got busted on the spot. He felt around my waist, and he felt all the guns. And I think I had like a shotgun and all types of other guns, a rifle and some other guns they had. And they told me, "Don't move or I'm gonna, we're gonna kill you." So I got busted. And I remember when I got busted, I had like, man, I think like 30 or 40 Russia pills on me inside my pocket that they didn't find, because they had already found so much on me. I think that they were like, "We got everything," right? And with my handcuffs on, I was able to get those pills and eat them all. And I remember I just knocked out till the next day, and they told me, "Man, you must really love pizza." They were laughing with the evidence, all on a big table. And I was like, "Well, I got busted," so I ended up going back to juvenile system. I was 16, but this time I was not going to leave the juvenile system. What they did, the state of Texas, is kept me there till I turned 17. Then they tried me as an adult. And so I went to the Paso County Jail for the first time straight from youth, from the detention home. And I went to tanks in the El Paso County Jail called the Rascal Tanks. Now, El Paso County Jail at that time in the 90s was very bad. People were getting toilet paper stuffed in their mouths and beat to death, getting their heads kicked through bars and killed, getting hanged, and them acting like it was suicides. People getting hot shots, where they would shoot them up with so much dope they would kill them, but it would look like if they were ODing or they OD'd. And so this is the environment I went into. And I remember when I got there, nothing changed. I just got worse. And the first time I was in the El Paso County Jail from the detention home, I did around 8 months straight there. So after around from the youth and up there, it was over a year, give or take. I get out, and I'm on the streets. I feel like He-Man, right? I feel like Superman. I feel like no one can touch me. Like I'm the baddest dude out here. You know what I'm saying? And I remember my life got worse. At 17 when I got out, man, I started doing a lot more, and drug dealing, everything, and kept going in and out. I remember when I was 18 and a half, around there, I was drinking so much at bars that I would throw straight blood up in the toilets. And I started selling cocaine too. So I was snorting probably like an ounce of cocaine every day, me and another homie. And it was just a horrible lifestyle, man. And my life got so much worse. And it's like my life was spiraling downhill, out of control, at a rapid rate. And so I'm doing all this stuff, seeing all types of things, and I end up getting busted again, man, for more robberies and stabbings and stuff like that. So this time I go back to the Paso County Jail, and they sentenced me to a restitution program. Now, at this restitution program, I was supposed to do 3 months. But I was such a knucklehead that I got in there and I was beating people up, taking stuff from people, taxing people, breaking people's ribs, beating people up, hurting people. And I ended up getting a 5-year sentence. And so for me, I remember it just came with the life. I remember my grandmother at that time, when I was in the restitution center, she wrote me a letter that's actually in my book. And I carry it in my Bible with me now. It's a letter, and she said, I had this vision of you, mijo. And it's me in a robe of righteousness with a satin crown, it shows in my book. And I have the actual real letter in there in a book page that my grandma wrote to me. And on the side it said, Isaiah is a prince of the king and has authority over the enemy, over the devil. And she said, this is a good one because it means you're going to be an evangelist or pastor or some type of godly leader, right? And all this other stuff. And I remember in the letter it said, you're going to touch people in this world as well as the next. And I remember looking at it, right, and throwing it on the floor. And I was with a whole bunch of homies that were involved in organized crime. And they all started laughing, right? I told them, hey, my grandma thinks I'm going to be a preacher, right? And they were all cracking up. And they said, homie, you're worse than us. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Because I was a knucklehead, man. I was a rascal, hardcore. And I didn't care about my life. I didn't care about your life. I didn't care about anyone's life, right? And so to me, that was a big fairy tale, right? My grandma kept this up, throughout all the years. Since I was 9 all the way till I was in my 20s, telling me about Jesus, this Jesus guy and God and the Holy Spirit and all this other stuff, right? Have guys come over sometimes when I was free and want me to convert or whatever, guys with tattoos and stuff like that. And they would tell her themselves, it'd be like, Rosa, that was my grandma's name. They would say, your grandson's, I'm sorry to say this, but he's a hardcore knucklehead, just like how we were. These were guys that had lived the lifestyle too. And they would tell her he's going to end up in prison, and who knows if he's ever going to change. So I end up going to prison, and I was doing the same stuff, man. Beating people up, breaking people's ribs, hurting people, stabbing people, starting riots, stuff like this. I was transferred around to quite a few facilities. I ended up in a facility where they locked me down in a seg cell, in seg unit, which is 23 hours a day lockdown. Now, seg for me was nothing new. Throughout my life, since I was young, I'd been out of seg my whole life, I was always in trouble in there. And I hated preachers. I remember I would go on purpose to go see preachers because my grandma would tell me about this Jesus all the time. And so I'd always go when they would be there. And I would sit there and ask them. I'd tell them, homie, well, what do you know about my life? Have you sat in this chair? Have you been locked up or what? And they would say no. And I'm like, let me guess, you had a mommy and daddy? They'd say, yeah. I said, let me guess, you had a cute little silver spoon in your mouth? You get a high school diploma or you go to college? And they'd say, yeah. I told them, get on my face, you know what I'm saying? You can't relate to me. And I did this to all preachers, man. And I remember one time a guy was telling me about Jesus in the dorm I was locked up at. He was telling me, hey, Güero, and I was running my dorm, right? He's saying, Jesus loves you. And I remember slapping this dude so hard that he fell on the floor. And I just hated hearing about Jesus, right? Because I didn't believe in him. And another guy told me about Jesus too, and I remember I had him held down with sheets on his bunk. We covered his face and we beat him with soaps like bad, right? Or he could barely even walk. Just for them telling me about Jesus. So I end up in SEG. I'm doing 23 hours a day, and I didn't know how long I was gonna be in there. They didn't set a date for me. So I remember every 2 weeks, month and a half, 3 months, 3.5 months, 4 months, 6 months, 9 months, they would come and ask me, because the only way to come out of that SEG cell was to go to church, right? And they would tell me, hey, Blancas, you wanna go to church? And I would always tell them, nah, chale, homie, I don't wanna go. And chale means like heck no, you know what I'm saying, like in English. Kind of like a little worse, but it's slang in Spanish. I'd say, chale, I don't wanna go. And man, I remember they'd give you Johnny sacks. And these Johnny sacks, man, they would have baloney that was green, right? And a little messed up orange and like a little milk, and that's all you would get every day, man. And I remember I would grab this bologna and shake it, and it wouldn't tear. You know, this bologna was like rubber. I remember I was always doing push-ups and sit-ups in my cell and counting the cinder block bricks nonstop. And I think it was like around 11 months, 11 and a half months to like a year and a month, give or take, where they finally asked me, hey, what do you want? Or Blancas, they call you by your last name there. Hey, Blancas, you want to go to church? And I tell them, yeah, I'll go to church. And in my head, I was like, just let me out of this room for a little bit, you know what I'm saying? So it was a bigger room. There was guys in there. I remember all the guys in there were terrified of me. I remember when I was walking into the church, they considered me a dangerous inmate. And so they would have handcuffs on my wrists down to my waist, shackled. And then from my waist down to my ankles, shackled. And when I was going into a church, they would unlock my chains and my shackles, my handcuffs. And so I remember going in there and them opening the metal door and me seeing all these guys, man, right? That I would slap, that I would intimidate, that I would mock, make fun of because they said they love Jesus or whatever, right? And because I saw them living fake too. You know, still smoking cigarettes, smoking some weed and stuff like that. And I remember I walked in and back in the day, man, I was a monster. I'm still pretty big, but back then I was real big. I would lift weights all the time, and that was my lifestyle. So I had big arms, man, probably like almost 23-inch arms. And I remember walking in and all the guys were looking down like this, just, you know, not even looking at me. I remember them pointing at me and then them looking down. And I was laughing because I knew they were scared, right? I just kind of like smirked. And I sat down. And what my chaplain said, you know, Gina, her name was Gina Montes. She told me later on that all the guys were pointing at me while I was walking in and saying, that's Güero. That's a guy that beats us and takes our food and our commissary and hurts us and stuff like that, right? But of course they didn't tell her, oh, I took their cigarettes and their weed too, right? But they're scared of me. And I remember Gina, at that time I was sitting there and I remember crossing my arms like this. And I remember Gina coming right up to my face, man. And I remember spit flying all over my face. And it was spit flying all over my face because she was preaching the gospel so hardcore. And I remember thinking in my head, man, this lady's crazy. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't she know who I am? You know what I'm saying? Like I run stuff up. I'm one of the ones that run stuff up in here, you know? And that's what was going through my head. I was thinking, man, this lady's nuts, you know? And she was preaching so hard, spitting all over. And then she starts telling me, you know, Güero, you know Jesus? And I was like, nah, I don't know Jesus or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And I was gonna start mocking her and making fun of her like I did other preachers, but she didn't give me the chance. You know, Gina was so hardcore and so raw, you know, rest in peace to my beautiful chaplain Gina in heaven now, right? But I remember her telling me all about her lifestyle, man. And she came from East LA, right? And she lived a hard life too. And her husband had left her for a little girl when she got to El Paso in Mexico. And she started telling me all this different stuff. So I really I couldn't say much, man, because she was a woman and she had a hard life too. And I remember it just kind of, it tripped me out. And I said, all right. And I told the guards, like, yeah, I had enough of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, take me back to my cell. And I remember when I was in my cell, man, it made me think, about how bold she was. And I remember one thing stood on my mind that she told me. And she asked me this. She said, Weddle, can I ask you something? And I said, yeah. And she said, are you willing to die for what you believe in? And I said, yeah, I'm willing to die for what I believe in. And she said, well, I'm down to die too, but for God's gang, and cubo in my face, right? And cubo means like, what's up? Like in gangster slang in Spanish, right? Right in my face. And that stuck in my head. And I said, man, this lady's down and she had a hard life and she's crazy, you know what I'm saying? Like she's willing to die for what she believes in. And so it intrigued me. And I went back. Plus I got a guy on myself for a little bit, right? And I remember I go back, man, and after a few times of going back, I remember when you would walk by, you could see the dorms. There was big glass windows in the little guard tower inside where they would control the doors and stuff like that. And you could see like the dorms, like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, like all the dorms. And some dude had shot dope up and he was dying, right? He was ODing. And I remember Gina banging, man, on this metal door, and screaming at the guards to let her in. And the guards opened the metal door for her. And I remember I was sitting down like I am here, and thinking, right, because Gina was holding this dude and praying for him, praying for his soul. And in my head, I was thinking, like, who cares? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just another dead fool, you know. And I was thinking that's what it is. If you live our lifestyle, that's the outcome. You know what I'm saying? Like this is our outcome. Like we're gonna be locked up forever in a cage, or we're gonna be dead like that, or we're gonna be sick. But one of those three. So I could care less about that dude, right? But something happened when I saw Gina do that. It's like love had hit me right between my eyes again, right? The love of God, really. It really made me think. And I went back to my cell that day thinking, man, I haven't seen love like this since my mom, my dad were around, you know. And it tripped me out because I said, this lady loves me, man. This lady loves people like us, you know, and I'm a scumbag. I'm a mess up. I'm a nobody. I'm someone that has already made it up in my mind to die like this, you know. And it really tripped me out. And it really made me think a lot. And since I was in SEG, locked down 23 hours a day, all I was doing was thinking. And so I remember going out to the next church service. And every church service that I was at with my chaplain, with Gina, she would like pinpoint me. Because she knew I was the worst one there. And she would tell me, Weddle, Jesus loves you. He has a great plan for your life. You know, he can do the miraculous to your life, and you know, he can do something great with you. And all this crazy stuff, right? That I would be like, this lady's nuts, right? And I remember I walk in that day and I sit there and she tells me, well, Jesus loves you. And she started telling me about God again. And I told her, look, Gina, I've never met no one like you. I know you're down. You're different than other preachers I've met. And I told her, I've never done this before. I said, all I know is gang banging, is selling dope, is womanizing, is being locked up. I was telling Gina, I don't even have a GED, you know what I'm saying? I was like, well, this guy really want to use me, you know what I'm saying, for his glory, like you say? And she told me, yes, Weddle, he came and he died for people like you. And so when she said this, I told her, look, Gina, I don't know if this God is real, but if he can use this messed up, broken piece of trash, in other words, I was saying, and here I am. And I put my arms out. And I remember that day, man, I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, and everything changed for me. I was supposed to get a lot more time, and the warden saw that I had changed, and they let me out. I actually didn't want to get out. I was reading my Bible a lot and getting to know God. I started off with a kid Bible because I didn't understand the Bible. And I remember looking at pictures, and Gina bring me the Bible because I'll tell you, I don't understand the Bible, you know. I never read it. And she brought me a kid Bible. And that's how I actually started reading my Bible. And now it's crazy because I could preach off anything I open my Bible to, anywhere, at any time, right? And that's how I started. And so then I started getting to my real Bible, and I didn't want to leave. I remember I was telling them, well, can I at least stay like 6 more months or like another year or year and a half or something? And I remember them laughing, right? Like, nah, like, get out of here. You have to leave. We're gonna let you out or whatever. And I remember, man, first thing I did, I got out. Gina had told me a church she went to, and I go looking for Gina, and I see her, and it's in a big church, and I see her going off on someone, preaching to him just like she would to us, you know, when we're locked up. And I remember going up to her and saying, hey, Gina. And she looked at me and she said, Weddle? And I said, yeah. And she saw me smiling, right? I never smiled before. And she told me, you're preaching the gospel, aren't you? And I said, yes, I am. And she started crying, man. Tears running down her face, down her eyes. And I remember from that point on, man, Gina would follow me everywhere I was going, everywhere I was preaching, everything I was doing, you know. And now I have a ministry called Gangsters for Jesus, and I've preached at mega churches, the biggest churches, and I've preached, you know, on the side of a dumpster, man. And what our ministry does, Gangs for Jesus, church in the alley, is we have actual church in alleys or in the streets throughout the nation, and we help the broken. And it always comes to my mind Gina, right? Because she's passed on. I did her funeral not too long ago, and it comes to my mind Gina, you know, caring for someone like me, loving someone like me, you know, that didn't deserve it, that had no hope, you know, and that the world saw as a nobody, you know. And what Gina showed me was that in God's kingdom, any nobody can be a somebody. And that's what we do now. We give people hope, and we've seen so many miracles and so many transformed lives. It's unreal. You know, prostitutes not prostituting no more. People throwing their crack pipes down in the middle of the streets and changing their lives around. People leaving heroin, you know, after 20, 30, 40 years. And it's beautiful. And I remember Gina telling me, because I really didn't believe a lot when she would tell me this, but I was locked up. She told me, you know what, one day they're gonna have a book out about your life, right? And I would laugh. I say, man, this lady's crazy. She's really crazy. And then she'd tell me you're gonna be on worldwide TV one day. And I said, okay, Gina, you know. I said, man, this lady's nuts, right? And then she'd say, they're gonna make a movie about your life, Widow. All right, Gina. And man, I got my book out already, and I've been on worldwide TV in over 180 countries, over 360 million homes, on the 700 Club. And they're writing a script for my story right now. So everything Gina said is coming to pass. And the love Gina showed me was truly the love of Christ. And so for me, what I want to do, man, is show the love of Christ to the broken. For me, I preach hardcore, raw sermons. Everyone that hears me kind of knows how I preach and the way I am. But when it comes to the broken, I'm still real, but I always think of Gina. And I always think of how much compassion and love she had towards me. And my grandmothers, right? Because they both loved me so much. They were always there for me. And I couldn't see that I had people in my life that loved me. And that I was breaking their hearts, you know. And I think a lot of times when we're broken, we don't realize all this. And that's why we started Gangster for Jesus. For me, the person I am now, the Gangster Preacher, you know, and a lot of people say that too, like, oh, was Jesus a gangster? And actually I did a conference with a big name preacher. And he told me, he wanted to meet me, right? First of all, I didn't want to meet this dude. I could care less. I could care less about green rooms or trailers or any of that stuff. Wherever I go preach, they kind of know that already about me. And I remember this dude wanted to meet me. And I could care less about meeting him, but he told me, I love your name, the Gangster Preacher. And I said, yeah, why is that? He said, me and my brothers are from the Middle East. He says, you know what we would call Jesus and the disciples? And I said, what? He said, thugs and gangsters, right? He said, so I love your name, the Gangster Preacher. And it's true. You know, Jesus, when he died, I think a lot of people don't remember this or think about this, but when Jesus died, he didn't die as the Messiah. He didn't die as you know, a king that was recognized for something great. He died as a criminal. He died as one of us. He carried all of our sins, you know, on that cross to redeem us from a life of hell for eternity. He redeemed us, and our redemption draweth nigh, like it says in the Bible. You know, Jesus is coming back, fam, and for me, that's what I'm trying to do as much as I can do. And I travel preaching the gospel. Doesn't matter if it's at a small church in the alleys, events, big churches, medium-sized churches. I'm preaching truth all the time and saving souls nonstop. Because for me, this is very serious. And with everything that we see going on in our world right now, and especially me that I'm in the streets a lot, I see a lot of the brokenness a lot of churches don't see. And so for me, it's something that's very important. And I praise God for Gina. You know, Gina told me I was going to give up, Weddle, before you got saved. And she said, I was going to a system for a long time and not really see anyone change. And Gina had actually left her big church and joined my ministry, and I actually ordained Gina myself, my chaplain, that preached to me later on. And, you know, she told me, when you changed, I asked God to forgive me. She said, because I was asking God, where's my fruit? And she should always cry and saying, here you are, right in front of my face. Look at how many people you're saving, how many souls you're touching. And I can honestly say, in the 23 years I've been preaching now, that I've probably gotten over 1 million souls saved, man. And I'm going for more. This enemy attacks everything about us. Our homes, our marriages, our kids, our churches, our world, God's creation. He hates everything about us. And so I saw a void in the church that they were not truly taken care of. They might go out and have some outreaches, and might go out and do something once in a while for the broken, but I didn't see consistency for the broken. And I always thought to myself, if Jesus was here, where would he be? Would he be inside a cute little building, or would he be in the streets, healing people, touching and praying for prostitutes, the woman at the well, the woman who touched his garment, right? The adulterous woman, lepers, people that couldn't see. All these miracles happened not in a building. And so I saw a void, and I started Gangsters for Jesus. Me and Rob, another guy in my ministry that ordained, it's one of the pastors of Gangsters for Jesus under me. We were talking. He said, "Hey, pastor, I got like 12 chairs." And we started talking, and we said, you know what? Let's start church in the alley. And our biggest church in the alley, man, is in El Paso, Texas. And we probably have an attendance in an alley, right? A ghetto alley. Probably anywhere from like 350 to 1,000 people in attendance every week, which is beautiful. And it's broken people. And so I feel the same way Gina does. And a lot of people tell me I'm their Gina. And it brings me joy. It brings me hope. And I'll say this last story, man, and end with this. I was in Montana preaching, and I was walking by a store, right? And I saw a Santa Muerte thing in there. And Santa Muerte is real big where I come from. It's the saint of death. It's a god, right? They pray to him, especially organized crime members. A lot of my homeboys worship Santa Muerte. And I remember seeing it and just looking, and then I saw a satanic Bible, and I saw this other stuff, right? And I remember I was with my wife and some Gangsters for Jesus over there, and I tell them, what's this store? And they said, it's a satanic store. Oh, for real? And then they see me, right? The two women inside, and they go like this to me. Hey, come in. I said, oh, me? I said, yeah, I'll come in. And I remember I told my wife, you want to come with me? And she's like, nah. And I told another Gangster just girl, you want to come with me? And she's like, nah, my cousin was with me. And she said, I'll go with you. I want to see how you operate against them. And I said, well, come on. And I remember when I walked in, I was telling them, what's up with the Santa Muerte thing you got there? And they said, oh, it's no, I know what it is. I said, do you guys know what it is? And what people do? Worshiping this God, where I come from? And I started telling them some really horrible, graphic stories that they probably never knew, right? And they were just quiet. And then I told them, what's up with the Satanic Bible? And they were telling me, and I said, what's up with this over here? And what's up with that? They started telling me, oh, it's this and that. I said, okay. My cousin said there was a sign, right, that said if you're talking about Jesus or being disrespectful or whatever, we're going to kick you out. And I remember telling them, and they were witches, both of them. I remember telling them, do you believe in Jesus? And they said, oh yeah, we believe in all gods. And then that's when I got serious with them. I said, no. Do you believe Jesus is king? And they stayed quiet, right? And I told them, just like you guys are soldiers because I do research on all you guys, on all these satanic people and people like that and people that are against us. And I said, just like you guys are 24/7 soldiers, I'm a 24/7 soldier too, but for the Most High. And I said, when I come around, when true soldiers come around, witches shut their mouths. And I remember these witches couldn't talk, right? Their mouths were shut. And I was going off on them, preaching to them, right? Telling them about, yeah, I said, didn't you see my shirt? It said Gangs for Jesus on it in Old English letters. But I don't think they realized because it was in gangster letters, right? And in Old English letters. And I said, that's my ministry. And I said, and we help the broken. And we do this and that. And I said, speak, witch. And she told me, Jesus was not like pastors nowadays. And I told her, of this, you're not lying. And I said, but I ain't one of them. And I started telling her exactly what we do and how we operate. And I said, look, I said, I know after I leave, you're gonna check me out and want to pray over me. And I said, so go ahead. I said, you could go to www.gangsterpreacher.com and look at all my dates. And if you want, show up to my dates with chicken bones if you want. I could care less, you know what I'm saying? And we'll see whose God is more powerful. And I said, I left and I said, God bless you guys. I love you guys and I hope you guys change. And I left. And there's people like this out here right now, man, that are pushing Satanism. And the reason people would say, why would you do that? Why would you go into a satanic store? And my thing is, if you're a true soldier like I am, I'm a frontline soldier for God. And a high-ranking one, I would say. So my response would be, why not? Is the devil not attacking our personal homes? Is the devil not attacking our lives personally? Is the devil not attacking our churches? Right? There's people out here like Lucius Greaves, a guy that is a modern day like Aleister Crowley or Alice Bailey or Anton LaVey, one of them, right? Hardcore Satanists. And it brings me joy that I come out on podcasts or YouTube or worldwide TV or a movie's gonna be about my life, you know, a movie, or my book's out. Because this dude's doing the same stuff, but he's doing it for the devil. And so for me, I'm ready to meet homies like that, right? And confront them with the gospel. And you know, one thing he said is when they put the statue up of the Ten Commandments, they put a satanic statue up because of him. And he said that he didn't care if he died, right? Like, kind of laughed about it and said, yeah, bulletproof vest on. Well, there's people out here that are true soldiers that are repping Jesus 24/7, that we don't care if we die either, homie. You know what I'm saying? And that's the way I live now. And I go where a lot of people don't want to go. And I preach where a lot of people don't want to preach. And we're going to keep it like that and stay soldiered up, you know what I'm saying? And I would say I'll end with that. I love y'all. Much love to everyone. If you have not accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, do so. You can always check me out and I bring up my website. You could go on there and check out where I'm preaching and come hear me. And even if you're a Satanist, man, I invite you. Or you're gay or whatever, you're a drug dealer, you're doing drugs, I could care less, man. I would love to meet anyone and everyone and change you for God's glory, right? And so that's pretty much my testimony, what I gotta say. I love you guys, man. For all you out there that are soldiers, stay soldiered up. Don't give the enemy even an inch, even a crack to come in. And stay on fire, man. Let that fire burn inside you so strong and so bright that people can feel it when you're around them, you know. I love you guys, man. Much love from this Gangster Preacher.